So in the world that exists in the middle of our reality that you can't perceive, there's two shadows and two hands. And all four of these components are symbolic. The single hand, the double hands, the single shadow, and the double shadow. The single hand is the hand of a master. That's the hand of a giver. That's the hand of a provider, of a protector. That's the hand of authority. Whenever you hear about the single hand, that's authority. When you hear about the miracle where Jesus healed the man with the withered hand, and when Jesus told the man to stretch out his hand, and when the man stretched out his withered hand, he went to stretch it out and it was whole. The single hand stands for authority. See, that miracle took place inside the temple, inside the synagogue, where the authority was perverted. The authority was in the hands of the Pharisees. The authority, the spiritual authority, was subjected to businessmen with religious outfits. In Jesus's day, this is what was going on. And the man with the withered hand represents a man who has withered authority when he's up under a system that doesn't necessarily support him. There was nobody ministering to this man, nobody praying over this man, nobody trying to heal this man. Nobody was trying to take care of this man single hand because they wanted what came out of both hands. They were only interested in what comes out of both hands, which is your offering, which is your work, which is your money. They weren't concerned about your power. They weren't concerned about your single hand. They were concerned about your double hand. Jesus didn't tell the man to stretch out his double hands because Jesus didn't want anything from the man. When you want something from someone, you want double hands. You want them to offer it to you, But the one with the single hand is the power. He told that man to stretch out his hand. He didn't tell him to open it. He didn't tell him to just show it to me. He said, stretch it out. Stretch out your authority. Stretch your authority out past that system that won't support you, that wants to call and collect you as simply a number, to treat you like a digit, to treat you like a statistic. They are only interested in your hands. But the master who created you is interested in your hand. He wants you to stretch out your hand. He doesn't want you to stretch out your hands. He needs nothing from you. This whole thing with God needing things from you and wanting things from you, that's man's conception. That's man trying to stand in God's way. That's man operating on the God level to rob the people that's still on the human level. So those are the hands. Now for the shadows. The valley of the shadow of death, described in the 23rd Psalm, is the effects that the finality of things have on people. The shadow of death is not necessarily death itself, it's just the shadow of death. It's the idea of death. It's the overarching reality that these bodies die, that these flesh and blood containers die. And that finality, that sense of impending mortality, tends to have us walking through the valley of the shadow of death, but fearing evil. When the Psalm says that I will fear no evil, yes, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. Since you're living and since you exist, you're walking in the valley of the shadow of death regardless, because we all die. That's typically what the human does. It dies. So that shadow of death will be there from the moment you're born. But here it is. That's one shadow. But then there's another shadow that will hide you from that will cover you from the depression, that the anxiety, the fear that comes with mortality. Is not going to necessarily protect you from dying, from mortality, but it's going to protect you from the fear, from the shadow that's associated with finality, the shadow that's associated with this temporal life. You don't have to worry about this temporal life, because where you were before you got here is where you're returning to, and that is the eternal place. This life right here is the smaller portion. There is no need to fear the overarching shadow of death, because that shadow is really a doorway from eternal life to eternal life. We are in the middle of eternity. Knowing this will put you under the other shadow, while you're walking in the valley of the shadow of death. You will have the shadow of the Almighty. Psalm 91. The shadow of the Almighty hides you, but this shadow is also a form of light. So it's a beacon for those whose hearts and minds are in the right place, for those who are really searching for the truth, for those who really care for others, have compassion, have a real true sense of introspection. Those are the people who will see you under the shadow of the Almighty, because that shadow will look like a strobe light, like a spotlight shining down on you, because you will be to them, to those who believe, to those who love, to those who care, you're going to be under a light. But to those who don't care, to those who are heartless, to those who are thankless, to those who only want to take advantage of other people and turn people into food, they will not see you, because you will be under a shadow that hides you from them, hides you from their anxieties, hides you from their agenda, from their purpose. You can be standing right in front of them and they won't know who you are. They will start saying things like, well, we know Moses and we know of those guys, but we don't know where this man Jesus comes from. They won't even know where you're coming from in this valley of the shadow of the death, this valley of the shadow of death, because you won't be afflicted or affected negatively by the shade that you stand in, the shade of finality, the temporal existence of this. That's not going to bother you. Matter of fact, that's going to encourage you, because it's going to give you a more expansive sense of mission, because you're going to realize that your life is not just about your life. It is about your life. Don't let these people, these religious bigots, lie to you and say that it's not about you. No, it is about you, but it's not only about you. Don't eliminate yourself from the story of your own life, because you're the main character in it. So it is about you, but it's also about others. It can't be all about you and not about others, because that's going to jade you. And it also can't be all about others and not about yourself at all, because that will jade you. One will lead to cockiness. The other will lead to resentment. One will lead to vanity. The other will lead to a complete lack of self-esteem and an overwhelming timidity, etc. So there is the hand, there are the hands, there is the shadow, and then there is the shadow. There is a shadow within a shadow. Will you stand under the shadow of all power, the shadow of the all, the shadow of the I am? Because that's the shadow. That shadow is consciousness. That shadow is a form of thought that lets people know that you have been marked with the gift and sealed with the Spirit. See, not everybody who is marked by the beast is necessarily marked by evil. No, some people are, their vision, their force, and their purpose are aligned so much where they can go in beast mode, so to speak. They can go beyond their flesh. They can go primal in terms of their strength and their energy and their dedication and their drive. They can go in beast mode. They can throw those sixes up, because they know those sixes are not in allegiance to destroying things. Those sixes for them is a pledge, because 6 is the day of man, the day that man was made, according to the Orthodox Bibles. So man is having his day. If you're looking at the sixes correctly, if you're looking at the sixes the wrong way, you're going to give all your allegiance to a beast who doesn't play sides at all. Leviathan, you could call him Thagirian. Some texts call him Behemoth. This monster is primordial. This energy or this entity, whatever it is primordial. It doesn't take sides. It's like the angel that Joshua met in the middle of the road. He said, "Whose side are you on?" He said, "Neither. I'm the commander of the Lord of Heaven's armies." You want to control the entities and the forces that exist in the sky? You have to learn that the higher levels of spirituality is not about a side at all. There's only one side that you need to be on, your own. Because the more you ascend and the more you grow, it's going to become less about this side or that side. And it's going to be more about truth that weaves through regardless of which side is pulling. There's going to be a universal thread of truth that the Spirit leads you into all of.